Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Let's rewind to 2020. I was a combat engineer platoon sergeant. We'd just gotten a new company commander, Captain Brock, who thought he was God's gift to the Army. My first run-in with him was after I finished running a M240B range. He'd called all leadership to the conference room ASAP. We waited 3 hours for him to show up, despite First Sergeant calling repeatedly. He insisted we stay put. When Captain Brock finally graced us with his presence, he spent the entire meeting bragging about himself. "I'm working on getting us deployed to Syria," he boasted. "It's going to be fantastic for the company." I couldn't hold my tongue. "With all due respect, sir, that's not a great idea. We're not prepared for that kind of deployment right now." Captain Brock's face turned red. "Sergeant Thompson, I'll see you in my office after this." The meeting ended abruptly. In his office, Captain Brock laid into me. "You ever question my decisions in front of the men again, and you'll be on latrine duty for a month, got it?" This guy had been in for 15 years and never deployed once. That takes some serious effort and a lot of brown nosing. He only wanted to go now because he was up for major. A few months later, Brigade had a mission and asked for volunteers. Captain Brock volunteered me, knowing full well I'd gotten married just a week earlier. I made it crystal clear to the higher-ups that I didn't want to go. "Sorry, Thompson," my battalion commander said. "It's between you and Captain Brock." Then, a month before deployment, tragedy struck. My sister-in-law committed suicide right after miscarrying at 33 weeks. We found them both in their basement. It was devastating. I went to Captain Brock's office. "Sir, I need to take leave. My family—" He cut me off. "Negative, Sergeant. We deploy in a week. You're going." I'd had enough. I marched straight to the Command Sergeant Major's office. Within an hour, I was dropped from the deployment, but Captain Brock was so far up the battalion commander's ass that he faced zero consequences. Fast forward 8 months, Captain Brock got his wish. Headquarters platoon and one other were slotted to deploy. Of course, he picked my platoon because we had the most combat experience. Before deploying, we had to go through a month-long field exercise where we were graded on performance. By this point, I was beyond pissed. I gathered my squad leaders. "All right, listen up," I said. "We're going to follow the captain's instructions to the letter. No matter how stupid they are, don't give any advice. Got it?" They nodded, grins spreading across their faces. "Also," I continued, "we're going to make his life hell, psychologically." Every night at 2100, Captain Brock would hit the sack like clockwork. In the California desert, there's no shortage of creepy crawlies. We'd slip them into his sleeping bag and sprinkle juice on his uniform. "What the hell is going on?" Captain Brock yelled one morning, covered in ant bites. "No idea, sir," I replied innocently. "Must be the local wildlife." We'd also periodically hide his gear or render his rifle inoperable. The cherry on top, I made sure his tent was set up over a beehive. Those bees hated vibrations and loved juice. The idiot never figured out why he was constantly getting stung. As we were falling under a new brigade, I had to meet the higher-ups. Lo and behold, the colonel we were set to work under turned out to be my first company commander, Colonel Davis. I pulled him aside. "Sir, got a minute?" "For you, Thompson, always," he replied. I called up my squad leaders and we laid it all out for Colonel Davis. "Captain Brock is going to get someone killed," I explained. "His behavior is erratic, and our performance has tanked under his command." Colonel Davis listened intently, his brow furrowing. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Sergeant. I'll handle it." Needless to say, Captain Brock was quickly relieved of command, career killer, and sent back to push papers where he belonged. As for me and my platoon, I still didn't want to go, but our new company commander was my old platoon leader from my second deployment. Plus, I couldn't let my guys go without me. "You sure about this, Thompson?" the new CO asked. "No, sir," I replied honestly. "But someone's got to keep these knuckleheads alive." It turned out to be my last deployment. Some injuries forced me out of the military, but everyone came back alive, and that's what matters in the end. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be caught up in a legal battle with my own homeowners association, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. My name's Jack, and this is the story of how I took on our corrupt homeowner association and came out on top. It all started when I inherited my grandparents' old house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The place needed some work, but it had sentimental value, and I was excited to fix it up. Little did I know I was about to clash with the most uptight, power-hungry homeowner association board you could imagine. From day one, they were on my case about every little thing. The grass was too long, the paint was chipping, the mailbox wasn't the right shade of beige. You name it, they complained about it. I tried to keep up with their demands while juggling a full-time job and the renovations, but it was never enough. The breaking point came when I had to leave town for a month-long work assignment. I asked my neighbor Tom to keep an eye on the place and mow the lawn. But apparently that wasn't good enough for our homeowner association president, Karen. Yeah, I know. Talk about living up to the name. When I got back, I found a stack of violation notices in my mailbox. Each one had a fine attached, and they added up to thousands of dollars. I was furious. I called Karen to explain the situation, but she wouldn't budge. "Rules are rules, Jack," she said in that condescending tone of hers. "You should have made better arrangements before leaving." I told her I'd contest the fines, but she just laughed. "Good luck with that. The board always sides with me." And you know what? She was right. The kangaroo court they called a hearing was a joke. They rubber-stamped every fine without even listening to my side of the story. I left feeling defeated and angry. But I wasn't about to give up. I started digging into our homeowner association bylaws and state laws. Turns out there were quite a few discrepancies between what they were doing and what was actually legal. I documented everything meticulously, building my case. While I was working on this, the fines kept piling up. Karen and her cronies were relentless. They even started threatening to put a lien on my property. I tried to reason with them, offered to pay a reduced amount, but they wouldn't budge. Then one day I came home to find a "for sale" sign in my yard. I was confused. I hadn't put my house up for sale. When I called the real estate agency listed on the sign, they told me the property was being auctioned off due to unpaid homeowner association dues. I was floored. How could they do this without even notifying me? It turns out they had sent notices to my old address, not the house I inherited. Convenient mistake on their part. The auction was scheduled for the next day. I panicked and called every lawyer in town, but no one could take the case on such short notice. In desperation, I showed up at the auction with all my documentation, ready to make a scene if necessary. To my horror, the auction went ahead despite my protests. Some developer bought my grandparents' house for $500,000, way below its actual value. I was devastated. It felt like I'd lost a piece of my family history. But that's when things took an unexpected turn. The developer, a guy named Mike, approached me after the auction. He'd overheard my arguments and was intrigued. "Something doesn't smell right here," he said. "Mind if I take a look at those documents?" I handed over my research, and Mike's eyes widened as he read through it. Turns out he wasn't just a developer, he was also a former real estate lawyer. And he immediately recognized that the homeowner association had seriously overstepped their bounds. "This auction is illegal," he declared. "They didn't follow proper procedures, didn't give you adequate notice, and the fines themselves are excessive according to state law. You've got a solid case here, Jack." Mike offered to help me sue the homeowner association. He even said he'd put the sale on hold until we resolved the legal issues. I was skeptical at first. Why would this stranger want to help me? But Mike explained that he'd seen homeowner associations abuse their power before, and he was sick of it. "Plus," he added with a grin, "I love a good David versus Goliath story." So we lawyered up and took the homeowner association to court. The case dragged on for months. Karen and her board tried every dirty trick in the book, losing documents, intimidating witnesses, even trying to bribe the judge, which backfired spectacularly and got their lawyer disbarred. But in the end, justice prevailed. The judge ruled that the auction was illegal and void. Not only that, but he found that the homeowner association had systematically abused its power and violated state laws. They were ordered to pay back all the illegal fines they'd collected over the years, not just from me, but from everyone in the neighborhood. The final judgment was a whopping $2 million. The homeowner association was bankrupted. Karen and several board members faced criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. It turned out they'd been pocketing a lot of those fines for personal use. As for me, I got my grandparents' house back, all my fines were canceled, and I received a hefty settlement for the emotional distress and legal fees. But the best part was seeing Karen led away in handcuffs, still protesting that she was just enforcing the rules. The neighborhood held a massive block party to celebrate the end of the homeowner association's reign of terror. People kept coming up to thank me for standing up to them. It felt good, but I made sure to give credit to Mike, too. Without his help, I might have lost everything. In the aftermath, we formed a new, much more relaxed neighborhood association. The focus is on community building rather than rule enforcement. We have cookouts instead of citation hearings, and the only fines we collect are donations for the local animal shelter. As for my house, I finally finished those renovations. It looks great now, but you know what? Even if the grass gets a little long sometimes or the paint starts to chip, nobody gives me grief about it. And that's worth more than any property value. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It's not always easy, and it's definitely not fun, but it's worth it to see justice done in the end. So if you're ever facing off against a corrupt homeowner association or any group that's abusing their power, remember my story. Do your research, document everything, and don't be afraid to seek help. You might just find an unexpected ally like I did with Mike, and who knows? You might end up taking down a Karen and making your community a better place in the process. The next one is a petty revenge story. Hey y'all, I, 23F, had a high school bully that was quite frankly relentless since we were in 7th grade. Now I know that it was very immature what I did, but it gave me a laugh knowing I'd never see her ever again. My elder sister came to visit and brought stink bombs, not the kind that needed to be lit, or the sprays. This stink bomb was in a thick glass, almost bullet-shaped casing. All you do is step on it or sit on it, and the liquid inside practically embeds itself into whatever object it touches before it dries. With the help of a friend, we were able to sneak it into the top small pocket of her book bag. This is important to the story because she would always sit on her backpack since she didn't like the way the chairs, benches felt on her ads. Don't ask me why, I'm not sure. But on graduation day, that's when we executed our plan and all we had to do was wait. They had us all in the gym to inspect our attire before the ceremony began. Well, little Miss Priss decided to sit on her bag while she was waiting and crack, boom! The stink bomb broke and seeped through the bag and onto her gown. She had to do the ceremony smelling like straight sewage. Unfortunately, the poor people beside her were gagging and almost throwing up during the whole thing. She never found out it was me, but seeing her embarrassment was satisfaction enough for me. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So I'm a receptionist at a bulk billing radiology practice. Radiology practices are where you get x-rays, CTs, ultrasounds, MRIs, and other associated medical scans done. Bulk billing in my country means that the scan is charged to Medicare, meaning the patient pays nothing. The great majority of our scans are bulk billed. There's only a few bulk billing practices left because Medicare funding increases by a couple of bucks every year, and inflation does not. Most of them have now gone private, but we still exist. I have no idea how. Most of the scans that aren't bulk billed are flat-out scans Medicare won't pay a cent for. The exception is pregnancy scans where they pay a ducking fraction of what they pay for other ultrasounds because the government desperately wants us all to have babies but not enough to actually do duck all to make sure people have the money to do so. For example, if a physiotherapist refers you, Medicare will only cover it if it's a 1 or 2 region spine or a pelvis, and only if they're x-rays. Meanwhile, a doctor can write a referral for any part of the body and 99% of the time we bulk bill it. This will be important later. This is a bit baffling because to my knowledge, physiotherapists mostly work with muscles, pathologies of which are diagnosed with ultrasound, not x-ray. Medicare doesn't cover physiotherapist-referred ultrasound. They just randomly got lumped in with their mortal enemies, chiropractors, when some random person set the standards for Medicare rebates. Physiotherapists will also often have someone come in with a sports injury and be like, hey, I'm not sure this is muscular. I think this might be an actual break, and write a referral for, say, a hand x-ray. Now, full disclosure, physiotherapists are the bane of my life for unrelated reasons. But as you're about to see, this just costs the government more in the long run. So, every now and then we get patients coming in for that hand x-ray, and a physio wrote it. If Medicare paid for it, it'd be $40 to $50, split between 20 million taxpayers. But, oh no, I'm so sorry. Medicare won't pay for it because it's a physiotherapist referral. So why don't you hop right next door to the walk-in bulk billing GP who can rewrite your referral to Medicare standards, thereby costing Medicare $40 for your GP appointment and then the $40 to $50 for the x-ray, and we'll just CC your physio in for the report. The next one is an entitled parent story. So, background. My parents divorced a few years ago. Before that, my mother, 49F, and I, 19F, were inseparable and I always told her everything. I didn't talk to my dad, 49M, much at all. Shortly after the divorce, my mom started dating and I supported her relationship because she found herself good company. I don't particularly like this man myself, but I still go out with him. My father found himself a wife, 39F, with a teenage daughter, 12F. I like them both. We get on well and joke around all the time. My mother was jealous for a long time whenever I spent time with my father and my new stepmother. I think she was afraid I'd replace her. I liked it more at my dad's because my friends were still there and my dad didn't nag me about every little thing. My mother used to scream so loudly at me when I was little that the neighbors could hear the screams all the way outside. I had forgotten to do my homework, or I didn't hear her calling me into the living room. I was really having fun at my dad's, but I didn't want to spend any more time in my mom's flat, so I wanted to move in on my own. The perfect opportunity came half a year ago when my grandfather's, my father's side, tenant moved out. I got to live on my own. My mom heard about this and was a little upset that I didn't wait until the end of high school to move out. Mom, good that you are moving out, so you don't have to suffer from me. Before I moved, my mother was busy blaming me for everything. I had either forgotten my keys in my room or they were at the bottom of my bag, but I couldn't find them. I had just come from the opening night of our school play. It was getting closer to midnight, and I tiredly called my mother to see if she could come and unlock the door. My mother lives in an apartment building. She came in angry and started shouting loudly in the staircase. Mom, get ready to pack all your stuff. I've been thinking that you should move in with your father completely. I am not your servant. I was still living half with my mom and half with my dad at the time. I was going to my room to pack my overnight stuff, and my friend S was coming to pick me up at my dad's. Mom, you're just like your dad. You take advantage of me, and then when you don't need me anymore, you're just angry and crappy towards me. I'm only human. I snapped. Me. I've heard that phrase from all the crappy people. I don't like it one bit. Mom. Oh, well, you think I'm a crappy person. Me. No, I don't. Mom. Yes, you do. Me. No, I don't ducking do. Bye. Then hurried down to wait for my ride, even though she weren't supposed to fetch me in half an hour. So many of these kinds of such pointless tantrums had already happened. You can vaguely understand why I wanted to move out on my own. Every time she managed to mention how she was only human. Mom, I always think that you don't spend much time with me when you're here, and you get away with housework and stuff, and you don't do anything with me. You'd probably rather go where you feel good than stay with me, but you're always in your own room sulking. Me. Yeah, hey, I'd probably feel better talking to you and spending time with you if you didn't start complaining about everything every time and it's just a little thing. Mom. You only like me when I smile. I can't smile all the time. Me. You don't have to, as long as you don't complain all the time. I was ready to watch a movie with you tonight, but no. Mom. No, you weren't. Me. I was. I slammed my door and went to my room because my company wasn't good enough even though it was wanted. Mom, you always get angry right away. You only come to me when you need help or money. You surely don't behave like that with your father. Your father and stepmother must treat you better than I do, and in your best interests, of course. That's probably why you wanted to go on holiday with them, far away from me. I'm just like this. Me. Yes, imagine your own. Mom. Well, you're giving it away here. Would you rather be with your father than here if it's so nice there? And it goes on for dozens of minutes almost every day. In response to that wonderful rage, she guilt trips me into love and apologies. Mom, I love you beyond measure. You're the best gift I've ever received. I don't like it when you're here, so you spend all your time in your own room. Homework could be done in the same room as I am. But the time you spend in the same room is face down, and I was able to be with you when you were young even though your father wasn't, and that's why you were only in half daycare so I could be with you more. I still want to, but the difference is that now I have no energy. First of all, why are you complaining about not having enough time with me if you are not up for it? Secondly, my dad was working at the time and she wasn't. Third, I was a child and that's what parents are supposed to spend time with their children. Mom, I don't know what I did wrong that you don't dare tell me things and shut yourself in your own room. Now finally to the point, I had borrowed her car so I could drive my friend from one place to another for a couple of hours. We had an agreement that I could use her car all summer whenever I needed to, if I paid for the fuel myself as her commute was within walking distance. I was returning the car and she was taking me back to my place. I was telling him about my travel plans for next spring with a friend, as he had asked what countries we were thinking about. Well, Ireland would be nice to visit again, but my friend M would like to see the place better, as it would be a new country for her. Mom, it might not be worth going there as it's slower to get around and you might want to go on your own trip. Me, yes, and you should probably rent your own car if you're going to be in the country for a longer period of time. Mom, well that's not what I meant. Do you ever listen? Let me have my say. Will you let your father have your say? Me. Come on, Mom. Or your stepmother. I'm only good for when you need a car or want money or know you'll need money in the future, otherwise you can't contact me. Me. Yes, because the time you see me, you're screaming or getting angry. Mom. I'm only human. Me. Yes, I ducking am too. Mom. No need to drive all the way to the yard, just leave it on the road and I'll leave right away. Then tell me how much money you need for the trip next spring. No need to contact me. And then she drove off. I am not surprised this actually happened. I had been waiting for it, for my mental health, but not from a reason like this. My plan was to slowly meet her from time to time and maybe leave it at that so we could see each other at family gatherings without the awkwardness and maybe heal our relationship. But now I can understand that that's not it. I don't know what I should do about my graduation and such. I don't want her to come, but she would get angrier and more insulted if I didn't. She might contact me before that anyway, so she could be invited since my career path and life has been so important to her. Well, now I tell my dad everything and come along with him and his new family, so it is a win. But I still don't know what to do with my mother. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.